Thanks a ton for checking out this episode. Today I'm going to be chatting with my good friend Lauren Rudick. She is an internationally renowned yoga instructor who's actually running retreats and events all around the world right now. She's easily one of the most loving and welcoming people around, and it's always a pleasure catching up with her. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, cool. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for doing a podcast.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for having me. Thank you for coming to visit me in my home to record this.
Yeah, this is awesome. I think, well, I guess there was that scheduling error that I had a couple weeks ago when I just showed up here randomly. But other than that, I haven't talked to you or I haven't hung out with you in 4 years.
Has it been 4 years?
It's a few months off of 4 years now.
We should probably tell people of our backstory.
Yeah, I know.
So we met in Costa Rica when you and your buddies were my backyard neighbors, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
And we used to go surfing almost every morning together with all the boys and all the girls and have coffee most days at Don John's. I hope John's listening. Hey, John. Yeah, what an era. 4 years, hey?
I know. It's been a really long time. It's crazy.
I can't believe how long it's been.
I know. I think it's 4. It is 4, 100%.
Yeah, it was my first year living there.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I know.
It was a different time of our lives. But, and then we went on an amazing and unpredictable trip to Panama.
Yep.
Where
hung out in Bocas del Toro with Andy and stuff. That was awesome.
It was.
I know that trip. I liked talking to you and Andy about it because for me, that was just the biggest adventure I've ever done. So I just thought it was. I've never traveled for that long. I've never just kind of
no wonder you were so
done
nervous
things
that
on a
day
whim.
in the mangroves. Okay, makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. That was way out there too, though. But
It wasn't.
it was. But anyways, yeah, and I've talked to Andy a bunch, and he's traveled way more than me, and so have you. And Andy was always like, "Man, that was the best trip ever."
It was,
and
such
it's so
a special
reassuring
time.
because I just thought that it was me because I haven't really done it as much as you guys. But
that was such a special time. I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong, and we just agreed, sort of unspoken, to make the best of it, and we were going to have a great time no matter what happened, and we did. Even from the start of it, we got on the wrong. First, we were screwed over by that taxi driver, remember? Mm-hmm. And then we got to the wrong bus station, and then we had to drive all the way across San Jose, Costa Rica, and then we got to the wrong bus, and we were on the wrong bus for like 6 hours. Got to the wrong border. We had to stay the night in Boquete in that weird Kurt Cobain-inspired youth hostel.
yeah, it's funny even hearing you say we went to the wrong border because I never remembered it that way at all.
Really?
I was just like, yeah, this is our trip. We took this route, and this is how we figured it out.
I mean,
I thought we were just figuring it out as we went.
It was never supposed to take like 2.5 days to get there. It should have been 12 hours.
Yeah, I remember that part. Yeah, but that was good. Boquete was a pretty cool city.
I think everything about that just kind of worked out serendipitously because, yeah, it was just like this weird string of unfortunate events. Even when we were crossing the border, like we weren't supposed to go to a border that you had to walk across, but we ended up at a border that was really sketch. And Andy had that rig on his surfboard bag, remember? So he could wheel it, and it broke. Yeah. And we had to carry his surfboards back and forth across that border.
Bag.
And just everything about it, but it was so fun. Every mishap was so much fun.
I know.
Yeah, I had such a great time with you guys. And honestly, I am so grateful to both of you because I think it was the first time that I've ever traveled with two guys and felt just really welcomed in. And it wasn't like a girl and two guys. It was like, we're just in this, we're a family, we're all equal, we're all in it together. And I just felt like you guys had such a beautiful level of respect for me. And like right away from the beginning, it was like, we're here, we're doing this together. Everybody's voice counts, everybody's opinion counts, and everybody needs to be happy.
That's awesome. I'm glad you felt that way because
really did.
That's half the reason like me and Andy are such good friends because we just get along like that. It's like a super even relationship, and I don't know. We're all on the same. We're pretty much on the same page all the time, which is good.
I just think the way that the three of us were on that trip was just such a testament of how wonderful an experience with people can be if you just commit to staying positive and being kind.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what that trip was for me.
Cool.
So cool.
Yeah. It was one of the best adventures ever. Big time. Okay. So I have a bunch of questions lined up for you. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them, but I mean, really the whole purpose of this podcast for me is to kind of get in the minds of people who are living kind of outside of the box lifestyles and just look at things a little differently. Almost all those people are turning out to be entrepreneurs in one way or another, because naturally those are the people who are kind of doing their own thing. And you're a really good example of that, because you're doing something that most people would see as a crazy lifestyle, but you have it pretty organized, and you've been doing it for a long time now. So to kind of explain that for everyone else, when I first met you, you were in Costa Rica, in Santa Teresa, and you were running yoga retreats, and people were coming there from around the world for yoga training, yoga teacher training, right?
At the time, not teacher training. At the time, it was just retreats.
Oh,
I
okay.
hadn't started teacher trainings yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so that's more of a new thing.
About 3 years, so about a year after I met you.
Yeah, okay, cool. And and since then, I know, I hate to relate things back to like Instagram followings, but when we first met you, you didn't have even near as large of a following as you do now. And you didn't have as many different retreats happening all over the world as you do now.
Well, when I moved to Santa Teresa, it was because I was in a transition in my life. I had been living in Montreal. So just really quick on the backstory, I became a yoga teacher 10 years ago, just after university. I had been through a breakup. I was sort of lost, as most, 22, 23-year-olds are. And I ran away to a yoga school. And the only reason why I went was I needed to sort of get over this breakup. I was so in love and so heartbroken. And I thought, if I go to a certification program of some kind, people wouldn't see it as running away. It would look like I was doing something productive. Okay. I had no interest in being a yoga teacher. I didn't know anything about the lifestyle of yoga. I just knew like the gym exercise of yoga. And the reason why I chose the program I did was it was away, it was on the beach, we lived in tents, there was no internet, no electricity, no phones, and it was vegan. And I was like, this is really gonna fuck with my head. And I won't be able to stalk my ex-boyfriend on Facebook, I won't be able to call him, I won't be able to think about him, I'll have time to heal, because it won't be accessible for me to try to reach out or, see what he's doing. That was really the only reason, and it just sort of was the start of this whole chapter of my life, where I was introduced to travel for the first time in a different way, like backpacking travel. I didn't really know much about that. And the idea that women can travel alone and that it's safe and that you don't have to get married at 25. You can actually have a wonderful and happy life being alone or being independent and exploring. And that was the catalyst for me. I left for 2 years after that. I traveled all around the world, like 23 countries by myself, 4 continents, took any job I could find, not yoga, any job. And I did miss yoga and the lifestyle of yoga that I'd learned at Yandera Yoga Institute, which is where I did my training.
Where is that?
In Mexico, Baja.
Okay.
And when I got home to Montreal after 2 years of travel, I tried to be a full-time yoga teacher. And I was so unhappy. I think as a lot of new yoga teachers find out, it's a really cutthroat industry these days. At the time it wasn't. I actually had a lot of work. But it's an industry that's like, you're giving a lot of yourself, you're running around from place to place, and the income for most young yoga teachers is not very high. And so while my friends had been starting their careers, after university, and they had been working now for 2 years, I was starting from scratch. Most of my friends were like engaged or had long-term relationships by this point. And I came back and I was sort of alone. I feel like I was living in a shadow of myself and trying to teach yoga full time, but not feeling like I was earning a sustainable income at it. Like I didn't even feel like I could go out with my friends because I didn't really have enough money to, go for dinner with them to a nice restaurant, or they would want to hang out with me, but I had to work every weekend. So that was really frustrating. Then accidentally, I was looking in Yoga Journal. I found a photo of a woman that I thought was so inspiring. I Googled her, and she was running yoga retreats. I didn't know what a yoga retreat was. I'd never heard of this. And then I'd say, like, yoga and travel is a thing. I've got to do this thing. So then I started trying to become an international yoga teacher. I started seeing what these international yoga teachers were doing and, like, emulating their careers. They had publicity, Facebook pages. So I started getting Facebook pages. They were writing. I could write. I started writing for, like, Mind Body Green and Elephant Journal and just submitting my work anywhere, doyoga.com, all these places. And that started me getting a little bit more known, abroad. And then I started traveling and teaching, and I loved it. It was really great. I was still based in Montreal, and I still wasn't yet making the kind of income that I felt would be sustainable for me. So I had a yoga retreat booked in Costa Rica, and I decided I was going to stay for a month after and live off my profits, because I wanted to move out of Montreal. I just wasn't feeling connected to that place. I don't think I ever really had, even as a child. Like I knew Montreal was not like my space, even though it's my hometown.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I knew I wanted to leave. I was going to move to Toronto, actually. And I didn't want to move in the winter. So I was like, you know what, I'll just like live off the profits for a month so I don't have to move over, you know, Christmas, New Year's. And then I'll go back home to Canada and try to get my life together and move to Toronto because there's more opportunity there, bigger city. Maybe I'll find more people that I feel like are in tune with where I'm at now. So I ended up in Santa Teresa, and I ended up living next door to Nautilus Hotel, which had a huge yoga studio on top that was quite popular.
So was this the winter when I was there?
Yeah. This was right before
wow. I
met
didn't
you.
realize that was your first year down there, to be honest. I thought you stayed somewhere else before.
You got there when, in January or February?
In January.
So I was there in the beginning of December.
Okay.
So I'd just been there like a couple of weeks or a month before you. Wow. So yeah, I had this retreat, was the first week of December, and the second week of December I moved into this apartment. And that's also a crazy story. If we have time, I'll get into it later, but it's like a crazy serendipitous story how meant to be that living situation was. But it was next door to this yoga studio, and I had actually gotten a really old beat up surfboard that I bought, and it was my first surfboard, and I wanted it to look prettier. So I got a whole bunch of colored wax, and I drew an Om symbol in giant hot pink on my surfboard with like yellow wax around it. I was so proud of it. And
I remember that symbol. Like, I remember that
you
surfboard.
remember that surfboard, yeah. So I was walking one day to go surf, and the owner of Nautilus was on the phone in kind of a panic. And I walked by her, and I looked back over my shoulder, and I was like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. I keep walking. And then she double takes and looks back at me, and she looks at my surfboard, and she goes, wait a second, are you a yoga teacher? And I was like, yes. And she said, I need you. And I was like, what? And she's like, our teacher just left, and she's not coming back to Costa Rica, and I have a class tonight, and I need you. Can you teach?
Wow.
And I was like, yes. So I taught that class that night at 6 p.m. It was like, 9 in the morning when I had met her. And it was full, and the feedback was really good. And she was like, everybody loved your class. I'm giving you 5 classes a week. Just like that. And word of mouth got around that I was teaching these classes, and people really liked me, and I had a smaller Instagram following, but still social media. And I was posting online when I was teaching. And so it was good for Nautilus, because other people were coming and saying, hey, is Lauren Rudick teaching here? I saw on Instagram or I saw on Facebook that she teaches here. And so word of mouth was getting around that I was teaching at Nautilus and that people were asking about me. So a couple of other hotels asked me to teach for them as well. And within like 2 months of my being there, I had more yoga classes than I can handle. I was offered 15 or more classes a week, and I maxed out at 10. And the most amazing thing too was that I was making more money teaching yoga in Costa Rica than I ever had in Montreal, because they were paying on commission rather than per hour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is it normally like that?
In Canada, from what I know, like all the places in Canada I'd ever worked were hourly rate. And all the places in Costa Rica, maybe it's changed now, but all the places in Santa Teresa were like you get paid per head. And so if my classes were full,
yeah, it was great.
It was great. And there was no limit to how much I could make. And so I was promoting my classes like crazy all over town. And I was, like I said, making more money than I'd ever made in Canada, and had this fantastic lifestyle in the best shape of my life, surfing like crazy. And I was like, why would I ever leave? Mm-hmm. So then I started bringing people to me for yoga retreats in Santa Teresa, because I just fell in love with that place, fell in love with the beach, fell in love with the lifestyle. And I was like, I can introduce people to this lifestyle, like even for a week, and they will heal. They will feel better. They will feel like the best of themselves. They'll get the opportunity to be in paradise. And so that's when my retreat business really started growing. And then eventually, after teaching there for a few years, Yoga Academy International was born out of a meditation, and that's kind of just really flourished.
Cool. So what do you mean out of a meditation? It was just an idea that you came up with?
I mean, it came to me. I was literally meditating, and it was like a download. Like, have you ever had this experience? You meditate a little bit, right?
I meditate a little bit, for sure.
Have you ever had this experience where you just get kind of like an epiphany when you're meditating?
You know what? Never when I'm meditating. I get epiphanies when I'm like listening to audiobooks and I hear someone say something and I kind of like connect the dots with something that I could do.
Okay.
I feel like that's where my ideas come from.
Sort of similar, I guess, to that though. Like I was
similar.
Just sitting in a quiet meditation, and like suddenly just the only way I can picture it, which is so crazy and it sounds so woo-woo yogi, but like literally like here, like into my like third eye area, like I just had this vision, like just like come to me. And I was like sitting there for at least an hour, and out of this meditation, I was like, I have to go start an international yoga academy. It's going to be called the International Yoga Academy. And it was like so clear as black and white. I even saw like the image of the website. That's why my website's black and white.
Wow.
Just
okay.
clear.
Yeah.
Black and white and vivid photos, because that's how it came to me. Like black and white, but this vivid vision of what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's how it all started. And
that's really interesting
now we're
because, yeah, I know last time I was here hanging out with you, you were telling me about your vision for what you want to do next.
Yeah.
With kind of having like a campus type thing.
Oh, should we talk about that?
You can talk about it if you want, but you just seem like you have such well-defined ideas of exactly what you're trying to do next.
I mean, I don't mean to. I think I'm just like a visionary, and I'm very creative. And as soon as one project's over, I always look for the next thing. Mm-hmm. And so I've done a lot of things in my life since I became a yoga teacher. And while they're all under the label of yoga teacher, like what I do now is so vastly different from what I did 10 years ago as a yoga teacher, right? 10 years ago, I was teaching classes in Montreal, studio to studio, and then teaching private classes.
Yeah.
Today, I don't teach classes at all publicly. Yeah,
you're basically running a business at this point.
Essentially, I mean, I'm still a yoga teacher, and that's how I'd like to define myself. But yeah, at this point, I'm running a school. Mm-hmm. I'm running a yoga school. I'm creating curriculums. I'm writing books. I'm curating content, running social media. And then when trainings happen, I'm the lead teacher and guiding the program and creating the schedule, and also bringing in other like amazing teachers to complement this, that see the vision, understand the mission, and are going to just be amazing. And that's what we do.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I want to go back though for a second. You said two things that I thought were kind of funny when you introduced me. One was that you're starting this podcast because you're interested in talking to people who have out of the box lifestyles.
Yeah.
And it's so funny to me because I don't feel like my lifestyle is out of the box. I mean, I know it is now because people are always so flabbergasted when I tell them about what I do. But to me, it's so normal and it's so aligned with who I am that it doesn't feel strange or out of the box. Like what I do combines all of my passions and all of my talents and all of my joy into one place. So like every day I wake up, I know exactly what I have to do with my day because it's like so aligned and so congruent. And when you said that you're always on to the next thing, it's not really that I have the next thing planned. It's just like I've been on this since I've chosen, I guess, to commit to like the path of yoga, the path of bettering myself, mindfulness, and sharing it with people. I've just been on this like slow, organic, incremental upgrade ever since. And so it's just so aligned and so clear. It doesn't feel weird or out of the box or different or exotic at all. My life doesn't feel exotic to me.
Really?
It just feels like the right thing to do.
That's really cool. I mean, then obviously you're doing the right thing for you. Mm-hmm. I think, I mean, I agree with you that I personally don't think that it's that crazy either, but I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of friends like you who are doing those kinds of things. And I think that before I started becoming closer with a lot of people who are, they're pursuing really unique lifestyles or they're just really passionate about their jobs, I kind of put that lifestyle on a pedestal. And maybe not even on a pedestal, just I put it in this place of making it feel like it's unachievable. And I think everyone kind of does that because it seems so crazy until you're exposed to it.
Right.
And then you meet people who are doing it and you realize that it's just a little bit scarier than just taking a really comfortable.
Yeah, there's just no security in it, but it's still a grind and it's still a hustle. It's just a different kind of grind. It's a hustle of love and a grind of passion.
Yeah.
It's just different, but.
Well, you really have to love what you're doing to be doing something like what you're doing.
That has no security. Like every time I launch a new project or even do a new teacher training, like I'm going to Nicaragua in a month to lead a teacher training, like every time I present that to the world and say like, in 6 months from now, we're training new yoga teachers, you can come if you want to. It's terrifying every time because if no one shows up, I have to do something else for a job, right? Like that is my job. Mm-hmm. Teaching people to be yoga teachers and providing continuing education to existing teachers and creating mindful course content online for people is my job. If people don't want what I have to offer, I need to find a different job. And that's really scary because for a lot of people, their job does not encompass who they are and their core values and what they love the most and the people they want to be around the most. So for me, it's like it feels like sink or swim almost every time. Like if it doesn't work out and I have to find a new job, like I think I'd be devastated. I don't know who I am if I'm not doing this. I don't know who I can surround myself if I'm not doing this. I don't know where I would live if I'm not doing this, which is super strange, right?
Yeah. I find it interesting that you say that it feels like sink or swim every time, even though it works out every time.
It does work out every time. I freak out every time.
You've done it so many times now.
I know.
Because I have a friend who's a videographer, not Andy, a different guy.
Yeah.
But he says the same thing. He says it's so nerve-wracking every time you're waiting for a job or you're trying to line something up or just not knowing when the next job is going to come, even when he's busier than he's ever been in his whole life.
Yeah.
And he's making better money than he's ever made so far. And it's just that uncertainty, and you have to just accept that kind of.
That's so comforting that somebody else feels the same way.
Yeah.
So comforting.
You think just he feels that way? I'm sure tons of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's so comforting hearing that somebody else expresses it the same way. But, and the other thing that was funny is that you said like, oh, you're also an entrepreneur. And you know, when people started calling me an entrepreneur, I thought it was an insult. I was upset because I thought an entrepreneur meant that you're just like some money hungry, climb all over everybody to get to the top jerk face. Turns out that's not true. I think entrepreneurs are just people that have decided to live their passion and find a way to create a sustainable living at it.
Yeah, I would agree. And I mean, this is kind of me branching into a different topic, but you and the same guy who I'm talking about who does freelance work, I think there is an image of entrepreneurs and they're just grinding and grinding and grinding and they're just doing whatever they can to kind of make as much money on their own as possible. But he is very different. He's just really nice, helps everyone around him, helps everyone who helps him. He creates really good relationships and he's really open with everybody about what's going on. And I've really just been kind of amazed at how well that has worked out for him. His career is like looking at a graph that just slowly starts very slow and it just starts going like straight up.
That's so nice.
You're a person who's just really open with everyone too. I mean, even just talking with you, like hanging out with you earlier today, it's like you are just one of those people who you're super vulnerable with everyone, even though I haven't talked to you much in like 4 years. And you just lay it all out there and you talk about everything that's going on. You were like talking about ex-boyfriends and how much like all the deep stuff about that. And I mean, I wouldn't do that. I know myself, like,
you're pretty private.
I can admit that, you know?
Yeah, you're more private. But I think for me, it's just like, I'm still processing things and I'm happy to process them out loud. But also, I mean, like I said at the beginning, I just don't feel like I have anything to hide. And if I lay it all on the table, it's like, take me or leave me. And if you take me, I know that you're taking me at face value for exactly who I am. And there's no mask or veil. So it's not like I'm going to reveal some crazy truth to you or some dark side that you're going to be afraid of. It's like if I share everything and I'm vulnerable right away, there's a beautiful strength in that because you can decide right away if you're in or not. And if you walk away, that's cool. It's not any reflection on who I am as a person. It just means that we're not on the same vibration. Cool. Walk away. But if you're going to stay and keep hanging out and we enjoy each other's company, it's like I don't have to worry that I'm going to slip up. But also, I mean, because of what we went through in Panama, like I feel extremely close to you. Even though that trip was really short, we went through something together.
Yeah.
It was an adventure. It was epic. There was a lot of emotions. Like I think I cried on that trip. I'd certainly laughed on that trip. You know, we got way too drunk together and I embarrassed myself on that trip. Like, you know, I think you saw every side of me that you could possibly see. And we're still talking.
I know.
So I do feel like I can be vulnerable with you.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean...
And Andy too. Like I still call Andy on the phone and chat with him sometimes. And like I feel like I can say anything to him because we went through something. We saw the best, the worst, the ugly, the most beautiful, the happiest, the saddest, the weirdest of each other.
It's so true.
What a weird trip that was.
It's funny how when you spend every day with someone during a short period of time, it kind of ends up being the equivalent of like being friends with someone for a while, because you look at like friendships in like when you're back home in Canada and it's like you spend a few hours maybe a few times a month with someone, but when you're living with someone you spend that same amount of hours with them in like half a day,
especially in the situation where we were in, because we were like kind of living together, sort of working, hanging out, friends, and we were the only people at this resort, so we were together like every single moment of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt the same way. I was telling you a little bit about my ex-boyfriend recently, but you know, him and I broke up, and it was a beautiful relationship, and there's no animosity there whatsoever. And when we broke up, I kind of knew it was happening because he also works and travels for a living, so he had to move on. He was going to Africa, basically, and I'm working in Central America. It's just a little bit difficult to maintain something, and we didn't know when we would next see each other. But he moved in essentially the moment we got together. Like, it was such a kind of fluke instance, and we had met, we didn't see each other for a while, we kept in touch, and then he said, can I come visit? And I was like, sure. And he was going to stay a couple of days, and then we ended up really enjoying each other, so he kept extending and extending and extending, and eventually he stayed for 6 months. We lived together in my shipping container home, which, was I living in the container? No. So, which was like 150 square feet, essentially. So, like, we lived together in 150 square feet. We ended up doing work projects together. We ended up traveling together. And even though it was really sad when we parted ways, I feel like I lived a whole lifetime with this person. We had a lifetime of experiences in the 6 short months that we were together. That, I mean, it's sad, but also so beautiful that we got to have all of that and be in love.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
I know. That's the thing. You really just have to appreciate those things, even when they kind of don't work out, and maybe, you know, they kind of fall down the wayside.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, really, really awesome connections with people are pretty rare. So regardless, you learn so much from those every time. I mean, that's the approach that I've started taking, is just like appreciating them for whatever happens, because I learned so much from that kind of thing. It's like that. I feel like that's when I learned the most about myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so one thing I wanted to ask you, because you've brought this up with me before.
I'm like nervous every time you're going to ask a question.
Really? Why?
It's going to be deep.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I know. I've thought about these a little bit.
I know.
But
that's why I'm nervous.
But yeah, so you have talked to me about how basically in your industry, you have felt before, when you started doing better and making more money and kind of putting more time into your business, people kind of trying to make you feel bad for that. And there was almost, in the spiritual world, there's kind of like sometimes a perspective where people think that you're supposed to just be in tune with everything, and it's not about making money.
Yeah. I don't think that people have necessarily been mean to me. I mean, like, I've had some comments on Instagram, but whatever, they're strangers. It doesn't affect me. But I did some consulting with a woman who basically helps yoga teachers up-level their careers. And she said to me, I don't know why it is that yoga teachers take a vow of poverty. And I got to thinking about that, and I realized how much victim mentality I had and how many weird, fucked up money stories that I had in my mind. And it's true, like, when I started doing better at my business and making more money, like, I felt guilty. It's like, who am I to do well in this job that I feel is such a service? And actually, I did receive some flack, like when I decided to part ways with Santa Teresa. Now I'm doing teacher trainings in Nicaragua, and there was people in the community that sent me the meanest messages saying, like, you only care about money and business, and that's why you're going to Nicaragua, because it's cheaper, and you don't care about the community, and you don't care about locals. And I was like, actually, that's not at all true. In Santa Teresa, I could not find a yoga retreat property that was owned by local Costa Ricans, and everybody I worked with who was foreign. In Nicaragua, the property that we're doing teacher training on is owned by a Nicaraguan man. This property has been in his family for 86 years. It was his family's former cattle ranch. The rancher's home has now been converted into this beautiful retreat center. So I know that I'm literally giving money directly to someone local. He employs 17 people in this neighborhood that would not otherwise have jobs because they're not literate and they live in a tiny beach town. On top of that, we bring in a chef who's from the United States, but she's fluent in Spanish. And she basically is coming in on the condition that she could have helpers in the kitchen who are locals and who she can educate on how to cook more healthy food and talk to them about women's issues while they're cooking together in the kitchen. Like, this is so aligned with my values, and the fact that I know I'm supporting, local businesses, local business owners, local people to have better jobs, helping to educate women. This is everything that we want to do. So that's why we're moving on. And it's not about finances. It's about being congruent with the vision. And also, yes, I want to make more money, but I'm not at all afraid to say that anymore. Like, I have a school, it's a for-profit school, and teaching people to be yoga teachers is my job. If I didn't make money at that, I would have to get another job. And frankly, the work that we do with myself and my co-teachers and the school is changing people's lives. And I'm not saying that because I'm an egomaniac. I'm saying that because our students tell us so. We have worked so hard to create a program and bring in people who can support these men and women to feel better in their lives, to have the tools to be happier, to feel more confident, to feel like they have a family of unconditional love when a lot of times they've never had that before, and live in paradise for a month. It is a complete game changer. So if I don't make enough money with this job to be able to support my teachers and pay them and the therapists and continue my own education so I have more to offer and seek out therapy myself so I can be a better counselor, listener, yoga teacher, have enough money to hire chefs who can teach people how to cook really healthy food and to buy healthy fruits and vegetables, like if the income isn't there, then I can't offer that fantastic service. So it took me a long time to get to this place, but now I truly feel like I should be making money at this because my work is helping people change their lives. And what could possibly be more noble than that?
I agree. Do you find that, do all yoga teacher trainings kind of take the approach that you do? Because I know you're a lot more,
No.
I know yours are a lot different than the ones that I've heard about before. Because mostly it's traditionally just teaching yoga.
Totally.
And yours is a lot more about kind of taking grasp and control of your own life and your own mindset, and so that you can help yourself in more ways than just being able to make a good living as a yoga instructor.
Totally. Most yoga teacher trainings out there are about poses. Like, this is how to teach a yoga class. So people can go and be a gym instructor. For me, yoga changed my life. The lifestyle of yoga changed my life. Mindfulness changed my life. And my teachers feel the same. And we feel it's our job to impart that onto other people. Yes, we're also going to teach them the cool poses and how to do the tricks and alignment and blah, blah, blah. But it's about immersing yourself in this environment of community, unconditional love, meditating every day, eating healthy food, nourishing yourself, mind, body, and soul, so that you can feel the best that you've ever felt. Because when you feel good and strong and happy and empowered, you can be a better person for others, whether it's as a yoga teacher or as a mother or as a stewardess or as a lawyer. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. When you take care of yourself, you can take care of others, and it's not out of selfishness. It's out of service.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, one thing that I've noticed ever since starting this podcast, and probably even before that, probably for the last year or two, I've been kind of looking up to people who are doing well at things that they enjoy. So basically successful people, and kind of trying to understand how they are where they are. And I think for the most part, they're just people who have their shit together in all the different basic areas. But that might sound a little crazy and hard to do when I word it like that, but they take care of their health and their nutrition, because that makes you feel better. And then they take care of their personal situations. So they make sure that they have a job, and they make sure that they have enough money to live their life comfortably. And they make sure that they have good relationships, and they make sure that they get enough sleep. And it's all these little simple things, and also taking care of yourself emotionally and spiritually, as much as that might sound like kind of a hippie woo-woo type of thing to say. Those are the kind of people who do really well. They're not crazy people. They're not people who are on some other level that's unachievable. They're just people who have their own emotional state in such order that they're able to kind of project out the things that they want into their living situation.
You've probably heard this quite a few times. Tanto, stop. Yeah, so if you think about airlines, I mean, this is an analogy that's made a million times, but when the airlines do their safety announcements, they have this film, or the stewardesses or stewards do a demonstration, and they say, oh, sorry, that's so politically incorrect. The flight attendants say, in case of emergency, the cabin pressure may change and a mask might drop down from the ceilings. Please put on your own mask before helping another, right? And they show that video, and they often show this video of like a mom putting on an oxygen mask and then putting it on her child. And I remember the first few times I saw this, I was horrified at this idea that like the mother is putting on her mask before the little helpless kid. And now when I look at that, I realize, of course, because if the mom can't breathe and is suffocating and panicking, she can't do anything for anyone else. And that kid is definitely going to die. So if you want to be the best for others, you have to be the best for yourself first. And that's really something that we try to impart on our training. And that's something that we try to teach. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's selfless. If you want to be a good person, you have to first be in a great relationship with yourself. You have to first be kind to yourself. You have to first take care of yourself, because it's like practice for doing it with other people.
Mm-hmm. For sure. There's one guy who I was watching a YouTube video from him recently, and he was talking about how selfishness is really a good thing. It's just totally misinterpreted. There's a whole difference between being selfish and being like narcissistic. They're actually totally different.
Totally different.
Because being selfish is you focusing on things that you want for yourself so that you can provide more for everything around you.
Right.
Which you have to be to a certain extent. But being narcissistic is a whole different situation. It's entitlement. It's all these different things. And they're really misinterpreted a lot.
Yeah, you have to really create this atmosphere of abundance around yourself in order to spread that to others, and also to invite others into it. And I want to backtrack for a second. I realized I didn't finish my thought about earning a living at, spiritual work, or earning a living at yoga work, especially in this field, or even like massage therapists, anybody who's in kind of a helping profession. And the funny thing is, what we're doing is empowering people to live healthier, more compassionate, more mindful, happier lives. We're changing people's lives. And let's say you go to a plastic surgeon, okay? Now, our work is not a necessity in your life. So let's say you go to a plastic surgeon and you have a procedure done that's also not a necessity. For example, maybe you broke your nose when you were a child and your nose is completely crooked and you've always felt insecure and everybody can see it on your face. And so you go and you have a rhinoplasty and suddenly you have more confidence. And suddenly you're looking at people and making much more direct eye contact, and you're smiling more. And in turn, people are smiling back at you. People are making better eye contact with you. You're standing up taller because you feel more beautiful, and you're presenting yourself with much more confidence. And in turn, people are treating you with more respect and trust. That procedure has changed that person's life, right? Because their interactions with others are now going to be different because they feel differently about themselves. Mm-hmm. No one ever walks into a plastic surgeon's office and says, hey, I know that you really love doing these nose jobs, because obviously if you were wanting to be more of a helping doctor, you would have worked in a hospital in the ER or intensive care unit. But obviously since you're a plastic surgeon, you're kind of more of an artist, like a sculptor. So I don't really think I should pay you to do your job. I don't think you deserve to earn a good living at that. Even though you have like a lot of education in it and went into a lot of schooling for it, you obviously really love what you do. So it's not that necessary. I don't think I should pay you. Right? You would never do that. You would never walk into a plastic surgeon who's a doctor's office and say, I don't think that you deserve to make a living for your work because it's not a life necessity.
Mm-hmm. That's a really interesting analogy.
Right. Like my work is also not a life necessity, but it's doing a similar thing, right? It's infusing people with confidence. It's helping them stand up a little taller, make more eye contact, be more assertive. And in turn, you get a different reaction from people. Mm-hmm. And it's going to change your life, because when people interact with you differently, you get a feedback response, feedback loop that will encourage these new feelings and continue on your way. So I've been studying yoga now for 15 years. I've done multiple teacher trainings for myself, not teaching them. I've taken multiple teacher training. I do continuing education every year. I attend seminars. I take courses. I do online courses. This is my life's work. I've been spending my life learning to hone my craft. And it's enhancing people's lives. So why don't I deserve to earn the same kind of living as a surgeon would? Mm-hmm. I feel like I do.
I can totally agree with you on that. I mean, there's a lot of people who I've met recently who have gone to not yoga teacher training like you do, but very similar type things, where they go away to a conference in LA, or there's a whole bunch in the States where these kind of happen. And it's basically somewhere where you get down to the root of why you have limiting beliefs, why you think a certain way. You kind of talk to experts and psychologists and all these different people to change the way that you look at your own life. Mm-hmm. And I honestly used to kind of look down on that industry, because I used to kind of have this basically an image of that whole world as just a bunch of people who are kind of taking advantage of people with insecurities. But
I did too for a long time.
yeah, and I'm sure that kind of exists, but the people who I know who have gone to these come back totally different. It's almost like they weren't people who, I mean, you can never really know for sure, but they seem like they weren't just going to stumble upon a really awakening moment that was going to change their lives, but they knew that they could go to something like this and really...
Yeah, and so even if these people are the people leading these conferences, even if they're manipulating others and maybe don't believe in it and taking advantage to make a good living, whether that's the case or not, it doesn't really matter if they're yielding the results. Like, placebo effect is real. So if you think about placebo studies, it doesn't matter. Think about, someone's testing out a new depression pill and they give, there's 3 groups. There's a control group that gets no treatment. There's one group that gets Prozac, and there's another group that gets a sugar pill. And let's say the results are the people that got sugar pills and the people that got Prozac all elevated themselves out of the depression. Frankly, it doesn't matter what was in the pill. All that matters is that they feel better.
Oh, for sure.
So it doesn't really matter, like, if it's a yoga teacher training or if it's a landmark training or if it's, Tony Robbins seminar, and it doesn't matter what the woo-woo is. And it doesn't matter, it does matter the intention of the person at the top, but it doesn't matter if they're charging $1 million or $100. Mm-hmm. What matters is that the person who went there feels changed for the better. And if they keep encouraging that positive change in themselves, then it's 100% worth it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I think another thing to touch on really quick is that mental health is part of overall health. We just understand the brain a lot less than we understand the rest of the body. And just like you go for checkups at the doctor for your body, I don't think there's any reason that people should be ashamed of going for checkups at a therapist for their mind. Like, I have a therapist that I talk to sometimes, and I don't necessarily talk to that therapist when I'm feeling out of control or insecure. Sometimes I go when I'm feeling extremely good and grounded just to check in.
I think that's good. I think it's like doing regular maintenance on the way that you're thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And recognize that our brains do get sick, just like our bodies get sick. And if you feel a little bit out of sorts in your mind, go seek help from a trained professional, because you can feel better and it's nothing to be ashamed about.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that I've been thinking about more and more lately, and it's actually the first topic I ever wrote about, which is social media and how it affects the way people interact with the world around them. I think you actually read it over for me, because I wrote it in Costa Rica and I kind of met you and you had a bunch of stuff published. So you read it over, you gave me your thoughts, and then I submitted it elsewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically social media, now the science is kind of coming out. Like, back then, I basically didn't go on social media for a couple weeks when we first got to Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. And I just decided to write an article because it's pretty obvious, you spend so much time. When I was in university, you have so much downtime and you're on your computer or your phone. And I spent so much time on social media. And I had just finished school. I was like in an overdrive in study mode where I would study and then go and waste a bunch of time on Facebook and then study and then do that over and over again. Mm-hmm. And then I just suddenly was in Costa Rica like a couple weeks later, like not doing any of that. And it felt so much better for my mentality.
Oh, yeah.
But now we're at this point where the science is kind of coming out about how that can affect you mentally and the way that you're thinking. And my chiropractor, so I went to a chiropractor last week for the first time ever. And he gave me this little booklet, and it kind of had like 5 or 6 little very easy tips of how to kind of just live a little bit healthier. And he had references below too. And it said that people who are heavy internet users are 5 times more likely to be depressed.
Oh, I believe it.
And it was like 7 to 8 times more likely to be depressed if you're a heavy social media user.
Well, so I'm a heavy social media user, right? Because I have a big Instagram following that I have to maintain. And these are my thoughts. When I spend a significant amount of time on my screen, I feel so much less than. It affects my confidence. I feel lonely. I feel unhappy. I feel less cool. I feel like I should work harder. I feel like I'm not traveling enough. I feel like I'm not home enough. I feel like I don't have a relationship, and that's bad. That's
a really good way of wording it.
Very weird. Yeah. And the other thing is that social media is totally curated. And yoga pant companies send me clothes to pose in, and we did a little photo shoot today. So now you know kind of what goes behind the scenes to get one photo. And we took photos over probably an hour or more. I'm going to get one photo out of that session, and then I'm going to go edit it for an hour. Right? And it's curated and planned and beautiful. And then like bikini companies send me stuff, and I'm always very mindful. I like take bikini photos in the morning before I've had breakfast, and I'm always like super tanned, and I like to edit myself to have more of a tan. And you know, when I scroll through these photos and start to feel bad about myself, I sometimes wonder, you know, I have 50,000 followers on Instagram. I'm like, am I doing this to other women? Am I making other women feel bad about themselves? Because that sucks if I am, and I don't want to perpetuate that.
See, that's the interesting thing is you're on there and you feel the same as everyone else does. And
that's what I think everybody who's listening needs to know, is that I feel the same. It still makes me feel less confident, even though I know that it's all curated and fake. Social media is not your life. It's a highlight reel.
Plus, it's like a business branch for you.
Yes.
It's like a leg of your business where you get most of your bookings.
Lauren Rudick on Instagram is a brand. She's not that different than the Lauren Rudick human. The difference is that brand is polished and thought out much more than I am, right? Like together when we are hanging out, I'm like, you know, no filter, much more careless.
Yeah.
But on Instagram, I can't be careless. It's my business. You know, Yoga Academy International's Instagram is real photos of our real trainings and what we're doing. But again, those photos are edited, and we want to show you the best of the best. We're not showing you a bunch of photos when people are crying because they're tired. That would be a bad business move.
Of course.
And for those of you who are listening, yes, it happens. People get so tired that they cry. It's a fact of life. Like, you know, so it's just, and that doesn't happen regularly. Now I'm trying to cover my tracks. But it does happen. Like, it's happened that people get, you know, we're living in a close community for a month at a time. It happens that people have a bit of emotional outbursts sometimes. You know, we're human. It's totally normal. So yeah, that scares me. And the other thing that's really interesting is my sister told me of this study, and I'm going to definitely butcher it, but it was something like this. There were a group of people on vacation. Let's say they were in Costa Rica, and they were doing something fun like ziplining. Now, the study was trying to figure out what are the effects of looking at Facebook on people's level of happiness. And they had, I guess, like, you know, endorphin, dopamine checkers like attached to their brain, whatever. I don't know how you measure these things, but there's a way scientifically to measure them. Hence butchering the study. I'm not a scientist. And my ex-boyfriend used to say to me, like, I would say things like, don't you believe like the universe is just going to support us? And he'd be like, no, I'm a scientist. I don't believe in bullshit. I was just thinking like, yeah, I'm not a scientist.
You need someone to ground you like that.
Yeah. Months later, one day he was like, Lauren, the other day I was out in a canoe and it was so beautiful, and I looked at the sky and I wanted to say thank you to someone, and I didn't know who to thank because I was having such a wonderful moment. So I thanked the universe. And I was like, got to ya.
Oh my God.
Hilarious.
Wow. Yeah, you're rubbing off on him.
Rubbing off. But anyway, so I'm not a scientist, so I'm not really sure the exact scientific methods, but there's a way to study like endorphins, dopamine, happiness levels, and, you know, brain firing imagery, whatever.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's groups doing an activity, let's say it's in Costa Rica, that was really fun, like ziplining. Now there was 3 groups. One was a control group. They did the activity just like that. One group did the activity, and at various points throughout the activity, they were shown photos of local wildlife, like monkeys and macaws and whatever. The other group was ziplining, and intermittently they were shown Facebook feeds of their friends having fun back home without them. And the study showed that the people who just did the activity had like raised happiness levels, dopamine, whatever, endorphins, serotonin, I guess. The group who ziplined and looked at photos of wildlife also showed an increase of happiness. The photos for the people that ziplined and then looked at their friends having fun on Facebook had a decreased level in happiness during this activity. So
wow.
Even though they were doing something and having fun on vacation, they still felt bad when they saw photos of their, like FOMO, like photos of their friends doing things without them. Like, which just goes to show that imagine you're living your normal life, so you're not even doing something that's like over the top exciting or exotic or cool, And then you're looking at Facebook, it's definitely going to make your happiness levels drop. And I can tell you, for me, that when I spend significant amount of time on Facebook, like I feel really sad and lonely. I notice it. And on the weekends, like today, we went out and I said, I'm not taking my phone with me because I know if I get a notification, I'm going to feel the urge to check.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't
It's
want
so
to.
addicting, but it's engineered to be that way nowadays, you know?
Of course. To have, all of that reassurance. And like, even me, when I post a photo, like if I don't get at least 1,500 likes, I feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
And that's stupid.
I
Oh,
know.
is this caption not good enough? Is this pose not cool enough? Is my outfit not good enough? Is the edit bad? Like,
See,
it's ridiculous.
It basically, I think, trains people to need an external validation of some sort. And that, even when you're not on social media, that becomes a pattern in your mind. And then you
Yes.
go back into the normal world, and really, when that is what guides your decisions, you're not just doing it from an authentic place.
I mean, that
you're
being
doing it
said,
because you have this weird programming that is so unhealthy.
that being said, I mean, I'm so grateful to social media because it's the reason why I'm here. It's the reason why I've been able to make my living the way I do. It's the reason why I can run teacher trainings. Like, 100% of people, now maybe like 90%, but 100% at the beginning of people that came on my teacher trainings found me on Facebook and Instagram. Now it's about 90%, and the other 10 are word of mouth from people who have taken the training before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that our school reputation grows enough so that it's more and more word of mouth and less social media. But that's a fact. Like, Instagram is responsible for everything you see in this home that we're sitting in now. Instagram is what's like paying my rent. Instagram is what buys my dog food and these flowers on the table and the clothes I'm wearing.
Yeah. It's interesting because that's why I wanted to bring that up with you, because it's a huge part of your business.
Huge.
And it's a huge part of what you do. And I mean, I knew that right from the very start when I met you, because it was one of your most important aspects of your business back then as well.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but if you can manage it, then it can be actually not that bad. Like, I have a friend, and just recently we were just talking about it, and I never expected this from him because he used to be a huge social media user. Mm-hmm. But he was telling me that he stopped going on it before noon, and he stopped going on it for 5 hours before bed.
Yep.
And I mean, mind you, he doesn't run a business through it at all, and he was talking about how much better he feels. And I've never heard it put this way before, but he compared it to smoking way back in like 100 years ago, or like when our grandparents might have been smoking.
It's true. They only smoked like socially or after dinner or
something.
something.
And the whole thing was that if you asked any of them, they would say, hey, we didn't even know it was bad.
Right.
So everyone just did it. And he was like, basically, I think social media is going to be like that. Once all of the science comes out and kind of the research and about how it's affecting people, it might be a regulated thing.
I hope so.
Or at least hopefully.
Imagine it was regulated. Like, you sign into Instagram and there's like pictures of dead babies that are like, if you sign into Instagram, you're gonna lose your happiness.
Hopefully not that.
But you know what I mean? There's like fetuses on
the cigarette packs.
Cigarette packs. That's what I'm thinking. Like,
I know.
Photos of like bloodshot eyes.
But I just don't think it's that crazy of a possibility. That maybe
really
it will be at some point, if too many members of society are having all these mental issues because of something, society is going to take some kind of action on it.
Sean, you're blowing my mind.
Well, it's not my idea. That's my friend's idea.
Mind.
It's crazy though.
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, so I also have rules for myself with social media because I have found that, especially here, I live at home, I work from home when I'm not abroad doing yoga trainings or, workshops or whatever. So I'm home a lot, and so it's really hard for me to maintain that discipline of like not checking all the time. If I'm hanging around people, you can't take your phone out as much. So I have a rule. I do not bring my electronics to my bedroom. And when I'm going to go to bed, I like to have a routine. I read before I go to bed and maybe like wash up, shower or whatever. So that's like an hour of my day. My phone is in a different room. And my computer's in a different room. I'm not checking my messages, my social media, nothing. And the same thing is when I wake up, I do my morning routine. I like to meditate, and I'm not checking my social media until I come downstairs and look at my phone. And what I usually do is I will, do my morning routine, come downstairs, make some tea, do a social media post, and then I go walk my dog for half an hour. And I do not look at social media. What I try to do is like catch up with someone on the phone, or sometimes I don't bring my phone, or I listen to an inspiring podcast, but I don't look at my social media. Then I come back back at work at my desk, I'll spend an hour on it, and then that's it. Put it down, and maybe I'll check it a couple more times a day. But when my work day is done, no more. And another thing I've started doing is I post everything. All the content is my own. I answer all the messages. But I've recently hired someone to interact with me, because the way the Instagram and Facebook algorithms work is that you have to be an upstanding member in order for people to see what you're doing. So I don't want to spend all day like liking and commenting on people's photos. I've actually hired someone who is also a yoga teacher and part of my school, and she's, part of the whole thing. So she gets the brand and the team, and her job intermittently is to go on social media and comment on like people's stuff, because I don't want to do it. It was affecting me too much. And that's new for me, but I feel so much better.
It's amazing when you can really notice how it affects you. I mean, obviously you're aware. Last week, I just forgot my phone at home one day, and I biked to work. So I'm like all the way at work, realize I forgot my phone, have a really strange, slight panic.
Yeah.
And then I realized, why do I even care? I have nothing important
You're
to have
at
my
work.
phone for.
Right.
Yeah, I have a phone at work and I'm on a computer.
Right.
Like I can get in touch with anybody if anything really was that pressing. And I obviously didn't look at my phone all day.
Yeah.
I didn't open social media all day. I just kind of decided that, well, this is my day off. And I felt great. It was such a pleasant little surprise of how good I could feel at work and how focused. Because for me, I also feel ADD from it. It gives me that attention, like lack of attention. I'm like, oh, let me check something. Just let me check Instagram really quick before I go and do this next task. Or I could just be productive and just do it.
I'm the same. I'll like check Instagram, and if I have nothing, what's it called? What's the word I'm looking for? Like reassuring, like no likes or like new comments on Instagram, I'll go and check Facebook. And if there's nothing on Facebook, I'll go check my email. Like I'm constantly looking for that validation, like you said.
It's crazy.
And I think one of the reasons why we all had such a great time in Santa Teresa and why we all loved our lives there so much is that none of us had phones. Think about it. We never brought our phones to the beach. We never brought our phones out because it was always like either raining or sandy or salt water. And our days there were like, we all had our own routine. Mine was I would wake up, go for a surf, usually teach yoga, go have breakfast at Don John's, hang out with you guys for most of the day, and then usually teach another yoga class, surf again. We'd all watch sunset together, have dinner, and go to sleep. And, we would all have this lifestyle where we would see our friends because we were walking around town, and we never really made plans. It was just you'd bump into someone and hang out with them, and there was no agenda because no one had a phone. You couldn't go call the person or check in and like, oh, I wonder what John's up to, and like see if he wants to join us. Like there was none of that.
Yeah.
It was just like, you and I are here together. You feel like doing this thing? Okay, let's go. If you don't feel like doing this thing, we don't go do it.
Oh, it's so great for relationships because everyone's so present around you.
So present, yeah.
And I mean, I used to tree plant. I think you knew about that.
Yeah.
And tree planting, you're really out there. I mean, like there's no internet and there's no cell phones. Like there's nothing. So it's not like, I mean, in Costa Rica, none of us used our phones, but you could go back and check stuff.
Yeah.
But tree planting, there's none of that. And you just connect with people so well because
So
there's
amazing.
literally nothing in the back of their mind.
Yeah.
In normal life, even if there were no phones, there's just so much going on that everyone has little things they're thinking about in the back of their mind.
I mean,
And when
Costa
you're-
Rica changed my life because of that, because of this presence that I'd never really felt before for an extended period of time. I lived there for about 3 years, and just that idea of like not having a phone on me, not having the phone at the beach, being fully present, you are where you are, you don't have that thing in the back of your mind. I remember I used to walk on the beach in the morning to walk the dog, and it was just like so freeing because there was nowhere else I'd have to be. No one could get in contact with me. I wasn't thinking about anything.
For sure.
And then again, this like vision of a school came to me. You clear the mind and magical things happen. Like,
Oh, absolutely.
Clear your mind, truth will come.
And
I should write that down.
do it.
I will.
Yeah, do you want a piece of paper?
Yeah, I just took your pencil and put it in my hair. So do you have another one?
So I also know that you're a huge minimalist. And I think living in Costa Rica and traveling probably turned you into that kind of a person because I know that's kind of what it was like for me when I was going from tree planting camp to like a trip to Costa Rica, back to school. Having more stuff sucked, honestly. It was a drag. And
Literally.
yeah, literally.
Literally.
So you're talking about clear your mind and the truth will come. So what about clearing your space? And how do you think that affects everything?
I don't know if I'm a huge minimalist, but I'm definitely a minimalist. And
Do you find that it brings you a little bit of peace of mind?
oh yeah, so it started for me, like you said, like traveling, right? You go traveling for 2 years, you have just a backpack. And it was amazing that I had this, 35-liter backpack, and I had literally everything I ever needed on my back, and it felt so empowering. I had in there like, a first aid kit, I had games, I had toys, I had clothes for any weather, everything I needed and felt comfortable with. And it made me realize you don't need to have a lot of stuff to feel full. And then when I moved to Costa Rica, I sold/gave away everything I owned, except for my car, which was staying at my mom's house for a couple of years. Sold and gave away everything I owned. And it was awesome. I lived in a 150 square foot shipping container for about a year and a half of the 3 years I was there. And I had so little things, and I've never felt so full in my life, so abundant. Because all the things that brought me joy were experiences and people. And all the things that brought me comfort I had. And I realized that I didn't need a lot of them to be content. And when I moved back to Canada last year, to Kingston, I came home and I had nothing, right? Because I'd sold and gave away everything. And it was really overwhelming at first. I came to this very apartment where we're sitting, and all of my possessions in the world fit into 6 boxes that were in my mom's basement, 6 plastic boxes. I loaded everything up in my car, and I'm from Montreal, right? So I loaded everything up in my car, drove to Kingston, and I remember I got here, and actually my landlord helped me carry those boxes up, which is really kind. We get there, and we start carrying my boxes, and he goes, "Is this it?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "This is everything you have?" And I was like, "Yep." And then I got into this space and I just started crying because I was pretty overwhelmed. I had like nothing, no bed, didn't even have a fork. And one by one, I started purchasing things, and everything I bought was thoughtful. Everything I bought for this place had to have a use, had to have a purpose, and it had to bring me joy. It had to be beautiful. And inside those boxes, when I started unpacking them, they contained winter clothes, photo albums from my whole life, and art that I'd collected on my travels and sent myself along the way.
Wow.
So like if you look around, there's like that hookah was from Turkey, and my ex-boyfriend actually played backgammon in this guy's shop in the market in Istanbul, and the guy agreed if we won the backgammon game, we could have a hookah in a shop, and that's the hookah that we won. This poster is actually a vintage propaganda poster from the Vietnam War. And when I saw it in a market in Hanoi, for some reason it reminded me of my sister because of the 2 kids in the hammock. It reminded me of being a child and feeling comforted by my sister's love. And I sent that home. That mask over there is from Borneo. And I remember bringing it to the post office, and they wrapped it in newspaper in Borneo. And it cost $3 to send home. And I was like, I'm never going to see this again.
That seems so risky.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm never going to see this thing again. And like 4 months later, it showed up. All these things, that poster over there, it's from Chamonix, France. It's a poster of people skiing in Chamonix, and I got it on a ski trip in Chamonix. Cool. So like everything has a memory, and everything has...
It all has meaning to it.
A meaning and a reason, and it's not just arbitrary stuff that I put in this home. And it makes me feel so enriched. And I have a really hard time now collecting things. Like, I don't like to have trinkets or stuff, and when I feel like I have too much stuff, I do a purge. Mm-hmm. And every time I go away traveling, I somehow give away clothes. Like every time I have a teacher training and have to leave, I start packing and realize like my drawers are full, and I start giving things away. And it brings me so much joy to have less. Like the less you have, the less tied down I feel. I know that now my life can still fit into those same 6 boxes, and then I hire a moving truck to move the furniture, which is great because I don't want to carry my own furniture anyway. It's heavy. But,
Yeah.
It's like not challenging. Even my kitchen is fully stocked. I have everything I need to cook, but I have so few things. Like I don't have 25 stirring sticks and like different kinds of spatulas. Like a lot of people have all that stuff. I don't. It's like, okay, I'm cooking a meal. When I realize I need a certain kind of pan, I'll go and buy it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I find it a huge comfort to have little.
You know what? Yeah, I do as well. But I think for me, I'm sure you agree with this, but I think minimalism is often interpreted as something that people do to be better for the environment. And that's kind of a side effect of it. Mm-hmm. But kind of through traveling to places where people live really simply and living really simply myself, and being honestly able to say that was some of the best experiences I've ever had.
Yeah.
And the most valuable, rewarding adventures that I've ever experienced. I think that the minimalist lifestyle is more about kind of embracing the fact that you can feel way better and things have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about the whole environmental impact and maybe how much clarity of mind it can give you. It's just about the fact that you don't need those things to feel good.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people have a feeling that minimalism means that you don't have things, that you live in like a white box with a bed on the floor and one chair. That's not true. Minimalism just means that you're thoughtful about what you have and you don't have things in excess. And that's also one of the yoga tenets. One of the yoga yamas, which are the observances or the disciplines, or we call them ethical principles, is called aparigraha, which in Sanskrit means non-hoarding. And now we take it as letting go. But non-hoarding is definitely part of the minimalism idea. You don't take what's not freely given, and you don't take more than what you need.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. This is a story that I've actually tried to fit into a couple of the other podcasts I've already recorded. But basically, I used to work for a bank, and I had this job where people would call in and kind of try and sort out different things with their finances, and I could see all their banking information. And I mean, I was blown away by how often this would happen, but probably once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, someone would call in all stressed out about their money, stressed out about like their credit card interest going up by maybe 1% or some very minuscule thing like that, and they'd be freaking out. And I'd have to pull up their bank information, and they would basically be living on their credit card. They'd be like $20,000, $30,000 in debt. And I'd be looking at what they were doing, and their transactions would be something along the lines of, just bought 2 pairs of $400 shoes, just went to Arizona to play golf for a week, they're like going out to amazing restaurants every night. They had BMW payments coming out of their credit card. And meanwhile, I'm looking at their income coming in their bank account, and it's like so much lower than the lifestyle that they're living. And it just is crazy how many people are actually living that way.
Really?
And I don't think that anyone really realizes how many people are living like that until you work at a bank and you see it firsthand.
Whoa, that's pretty eye-opening.
It's crazy.
And that's something I actually wanted to touch on, because minimalism does not necessarily mean that you don't have nice things. It doesn't mean you can't drive a BMW. It doesn't mean that you can't have $400 shoes. It just means that everything you have, you're aware of and conscious of, and you don't take more than what you need.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like, I have no problem with people who want to have nice stuff. I like to have nice things. And, that goes in line and ties into what I was saying before about earning a good income at what I do. Like, part of that is I like to have nice things. My job is what lets me eat, and I want to eat beautiful food, or I want to drive a nice car, and I'm allowed to want those things. It doesn't make me selfish, and it doesn't make me greedy. And I mean, everybody has a different definition of nice car. Like I was saying, right now, I want to get a bigger car. And my dream would be to drive a truck that I can bunk a bed in and sleep in. Like, a truck is an expensive vehicle, but it's something that I want for my lifestyle. There's no reason why I shouldn't be able to make enough money to have that thing. And also, having a truck does not necessarily mean I'm no longer a minimalist because I have a big car. This vehicle is what suits my lifestyle. I want to put surfboards in it. I put my bicycle in my car. I probably shouldn't tell people where I'm driving to, but that's the kind of the idea.
Oh, for sure.
It's thoughtfulness.
Exactly. And being aware of what are your values and what actually matters to you too, right? Because if you're investing in things because of the wrong reasons, that's where it kind of gets tricky.
Right. Yeah, it's not about keeping up with people or having a lifestyle of something on the outside. It's like, how does the lifestyle make you feel on the inside?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and right now I live in Toronto, and it's the 3rd biggest city in North America. It's a huge metropolitan hub, and there's a lot of different people living different lifestyles there. And I'm not going to say who said this to me, but there's a few different friends who, when I moved there, they had lived there before, and what they told me was, when you move there, you'll meet a lot of awesome people, and you'll meet a lot of horrible people. And the reality is, when I got there, I don't think I met anyone who's horrible. I haven't met anyone who I would say is shitty or bad. But in a big city like that, it's a very non-grounding place. And I think you meet a lot of people who they're not shitty, but their priorities are way off.
Yeah.
Like they are unhappy people, and they walk into the room wearing like $1,000 worth of clothes.
Yeah, maintaining a lifestyle that they can't afford to keep up an appearance that they feel like will bring them more happiness.
Oh yeah, and they're like people who are making the same amount of money as everyone else in the room who's just dressing, just the way they want to. Like you can dress well without having to try and impress everyone around you. Mm-hmm. I mean, that could be interpreted in any way, me kind of saying that people's priorities are off. But
I mean, it all comes down to values, right? Like I'm not going to condescend someone who loves fashion. Like if that's what you want to spend your money on, that's fine. Actually, I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and they're both doctors and they just finished their residency and they've both gotten jobs, and one of them got a job in kind of a rural out there area, and the other one got a job in a big city that he wanted to be in. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, the one who got a job in the big city was the one I was talking to, and he said, yeah, well, our friend like got this job in kind of a less desirable place, but I guess they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And I said, well, that friend of ours is materialistic. And so if they made him an offer for like way more money to live in a crappier place, he's going to take that job. And you know what? He's going to be happy with it, because the things that make him happy are being able to have the nice clothes. He likes to wear expensive shoes, expensive watches. And that's what makes him feel good. He's really into that kind of thing. A nice car, he likes expensive items. It makes him feel full.
He's got fine taste.
Yeah, I guess you can say that. I was like, so you know what? I don't think he'll be unhappy in this less desirable city, because he's going to be able to afford a lifestyle that he couldn't have in a big city like New York, let's say.
Fair enough.
And so I said to my other friend who I was talking to, I was like, you and I value different things. We like to spend our money on travel and we value experiences. Our friend values things. So he's not going to be unhappy in a city where he can have like the nicest things around.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to want to have expensive shoes or an expensive car or eat at the fanciest restaurants. It's all about your values, but however you live, you need to live in a way that makes you feel full and fulfilled and happy, rather than living for other people. So if that person who walks into the room wearing that $1,000 outfit is doing it to try to impress people, it's the wrong reason. They're not going to be happy. Mm-hmm. If they're doing it because they like genuinely love to dress that way, power to them.
For sure. And just being self-aware of that is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an experience just identical to that
Really?
kind of story very recently. And I've told this to a few people since, but so basically I just booked a trip to California with some of my best friends. So it's going to be awesome. I'm flying there completely on points. I have enough points for almost all of the trip in general.
Nice.
So it's not even that expensive for me, really. And I'm using my vacation days at work. So it's like a perfect setup.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, he's really into collecting shoes. He is, me and him just have different priorities. I like to go and spend my money on things like going to a new place that I've never experienced and kind of learning about what it's like. And he was mind blown that I wanted to spend my money on that. And he was literally couldn't kind of wrap his head around how I have taken 2 trips this year.
Right.
And in my mind, that's not that crazy. And I just looked down, I literally was just talking to him. I was like, man, you have think about how many expensive shoes you've bought in the last year. Both of my trips are less money than you've spent on shoes.
Like walking into his closet would make you feel overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah.
Going with you on a surf trip would make him feel overwhelmed.
Yeah, for sure.
It's...
I know. But he's really into being in the city and being involved with all those kinds of events. And
Totally.
I like that too, but I have other things that I like more. So it all comes down to what you want, what are your priorities?